pretended he didn't know anything after finding out that the condoms were missing, and now I've been cheating on my husband for a few months now with an old-time friend, and I didn't think he would notice. I thought I was being smart, but never knew he knew all along, but pretended not to know anything about it. My husband noticed some condoms were missing from the pack, and he's about to take the worst revenge on me. At this point, I don't really know what to do right now. I'm writing this so you guys can give me advice on what to do to make peace with my husband. I really don't want to lose him because he is a good guy, and I regret what I did wholeheartedly. I wish I could turn back the hands of time and right all the wrongs and go back to the way we used to be as husband and wife. My name is Mayer. I am a 27-year-old store attendant. The name of my husband is Paul. He is a 29-years-old engineer. My husband and I have been married for 5 years now. Paul and I met back in school. After graduation, he furthered his education, but I didn't because I wanted to discover my talent. I had a passion for styling, so I ventured into it. I haven't gotten a store of my own, so I do work for someone. Ever since Paul and I got married, he has been supportive and has been helping me to pursue my dreams. Guys, talk about a supportive guy, then Paul is the right one. Sometimes I wondered how I was lucky to have been married to such a good man, but I messed up real good. I know you all would be wondering if actually Paul was this nice. Why did I end up cheating on him? Well, along the way, I felt like it wasn't enough. I started seeking love elsewhere, and I found one. But wait, guys, at first it wasn't intentional. Yes, it wasn't. As much as I wanted to be loved more, I didn't think it would lead to me cheating on him. Paul is never the type that does keep late nights. In fact, his job doesn't require him to come back late. Paul is also not the type that does hang out with friends, or rather, let me say, my husband is antisocial. We're two worlds apart in terms of social activities, but we still ended up marrying each other. Sometimes I look back and ask myself why we didn't thoroughly talk about these indifferences before getting married. If we had, maybe we wouldn't have gone this far in our relationship. Well, that's not the point right now, guys. I honestly regretted what I did, and I wish I could take it back. But I guess I can't, so I will have to deal with this guilt. Guys, my behavior with Paul changed when I started working at my store. I did keep late nights because of the nature of my job. Sometimes Paul often falls asleep before I get back home. That was how bad it was. Yes, we did have a lot of misunderstandings because of this. At one point, it even became an everyday routine. My husband and I could go on days without even talking to ourselves because of that. During our heated arguments, I never tried to understand his own point of view or see what angle he was coming from. Not like he also didn't have his own portion of blame to share, but I just realized that most of the things we both quarreled about was 80% my fault. If I had taken time to understand it, maybe I wouldn't have ended up cheating on him. So guys, what's even annoying Paul about my infidelity was the fact that I cheated on him with my old-time school friend. His name is Mike. Mike and I were friends even before Paul and I got to know each other, but we never dated. We were just mutual friends, and most of our colleagues then knew about our friendship. Mike and I were so close, but didn't get to the stage of dating ourselves. We lost contact after graduation because Mike and his family relocated to another country. So guys, just like any other morning, I prepared myself and went to work. We had a very hectic workday because we had a lot of customers coming in and out of the store. We even made a lot of sales also. That particular day, when it was almost time for my shifts to end, a customer walked into the store. At that time, I was at the counter trying to add some figures together before heading home. Just then, I heard someone scream my name. I looked up to see who it was because it was a familiar voice, and someone who knew me that much could call out to me in that way. Immediately, I raised my head up to see who it was. Guys, you all wouldn't believe it. It was no other person but Mike. I screamed and left the counter and hugged him. Mike and I hugged for a while. I was so excited to see him. We chatted for a while before I asked him what he came to town to do. Mike told me he came to the store to get some clothes when he came back to town. Apparently, Mike got into town then because he was on a work trip and would be spending 3 months in town. Honestly, guys, I was very happy to have met him then. Mike didn't also fail to show his excitement either. He also asked me to help him pick up some nice clothes, which I did. It took us a while, and by that time, my shift was already over. We left the store together and we went to a nearby restaurant to hang out. We got into the restaurant and made orders. Before the orders could arrive, Mike and I had already started chatting about a couple of things. I could remember the shock on his face when I told him I was married. He didn't believe me, not until I showed him some of my pictures with Paul. It was then Mike knew that I was serious about being married. What even shocked him the most was when I told him that Paul and I had been married for 5 years. He shook his head in disbelief and said I was just kidding, LOL. I expected that from him because he didn't know anything about Paul before he relocated to another country. Nevertheless, Mike and I had so much fun chit-chatting. I also asked him what he came to town to do after 5 years. It was then he told me he was on a work trip and just came to the nearest clothing store to his hotel where he had lodged to pick up a few clothes. At that time, Mike was a businessman working for a company. I also asked if he was married, which he bluntly shook his head and told me he wasn't and not ready to settle down at that time. I knew Mike so well. He was a playboy type back in school, and he's the type that doesn't take relationships seriously. I would always tell him that any lady that would agree to settle down with him should be ready to have more than one heart because he is such a heartbreaker. Mike laughed so hard to the point everyone at the restaurant began to stare at our table. It was then I knew going out with Mike is so much fun. So guys, our orders came and we ate to our satisfaction. We stayed for a few minutes before we headed out of the restaurant. The night was still young, and so we decided to go have some ice cream before going home. That was what I needed at that time. I wanted Paul to already be in bed before I got home because I didn't want to banter words with him. So guys, Mike and I went to a nice ice cream stand and had different flavors of ice cream. We walked around the street not too far from where we had parked the car. Way back in school, Mike and I often hung out together to the extent people thought we were dating. We were that close, and we're still close after he came back to town. After a few minutes of walking, my phone was already buzzing as usual. It was Paul calling. I didn't pick the cue call because I knew what he wanted to say. Mike didn't notice because he was carried away with what he was telling me. Not long after, we planned on retiring for the night. It was already past 10 p.m. that night. Mike proposed to drop me off, but I declined because I didn't want to stress him, and I knew Paul would be up so as to not give my husband another topic to banter on that evening. We hugged and he drove off. Not long after he left, my taxi came and picked me up. It was a 20-minute drive from the ice cream stand to my house. I got out of the car, paid the cab man, and headed to the door. When I got inside, Paul wasn't asleep. That night, he decided to do something unusual. Paul is never the type that likes watching TV, but that night he kept himself busy watching some TV shows. We greeted our usual greetings, and I went inside the room to freshen up. After I was done, I laid down on the bed and retired for the night. I was too exhausted to even eat what Paul had prepared for me for dinner and slept off. The next morning, my husband had woken up before I got out of the bed. I was too exhausted from last night's hangout with Mike. I hurriedly went to the bathroom and freshened up before joining Paul downstairs. It was the weekend, and we usually don't go anywhere except spending time with each other at home. But that weekend was the first day my infidelity with Mike started. Apparently, Paul was called for a contract unplanned and had to leave the house. I was all left alone in the house when Mike called and said he wanted to visit me. I was very excited because I saw nothing wrong with him coming over. However, I was feeling sad because I wanted to introduce my husband and Mike to each other, but nevertheless, I didn't think much about it. Mike came over to the house a few hours after Paul had left. My husband wasn't aware of Mike's coming because he had stepped out before Mike called and said that he wanted to come over. It took Mike some struggles before he could locate the house, but still came anyway. We chatted and watched a few TV shows we watched together back then in college and even made lunch together. That day, my husband called and said that he wouldn't be able to come home until dinner, and so Mike and I had the house to ourselves. The atmosphere was lively and we had fun. Guys, Mike and I were just talking about our old college days when Mike kissed me. At first, I couldn't wrap my head around what just happened. I was surprised at that moment. Before I could say anything, Mike told me how he had wanted to do it for a very long time but was scared because I might reject him. In that state of shock, I was finding what to say to him. Just when I wanted to utter a word, Mike kissed me. This time it was intense and we had fun together. A few minutes later, Mike slept off and we both were on the couch. At that moment, I was thinking about what just happened. I felt guilty for cheating on my husband, but at the same time happy because I just made out with my longtime friend. Guys, I had mixed feelings about that incident, but at the end of the day, I was all right. I quickly got up from the couch and freshened up and cleaned up the sitting room before Mike could wake up. Mike slept for about an hour before he woke up. I was shamelessly there staring at him and waiting for him to wake up. When he opened his eyes, he saw me staring and he smiled. Mike asked me how I felt about what had happened between us, which I told him I was okay with, and we kissed. A few minutes later, Mike stood up from the couch and had him freshened up. Not long after, we hugged and he left. Later that day, my husband returned back from his emergency work. It was past 11 p.m. that day. He promised to come back at dinner time, but he couldn't because he was stuck where he was. Paul had never stayed outside that long ever since we got married. It was unlike him. And so to make it up to me, he bought me some flowers and gifts. To say I was shocked, guys, is like I'm exaggerating. At that time, I could count the number of times my husband had given me gifts or flowers. He stopped being romantic after 3 years of our marriage. I felt guilty collecting those gifts from him because of what I had done with Mike. Guys, my conscience was killing me then. At some point, I thought of calling my husband to tell him about what happened in his absence, but I couldn't. I slept with that guilt that night. 2 days later, Paul and I were back to our normal morning routine, which is waking up, eating, and going to work. After we had our breakfast, we said our goodbyes and headed to our place of work. I got to work before my boss and set up the store for the day. Sales moved so fast that day, and we had a lot of orders coming in. I was a bit distracted because of what happened between Mike and I, and also the guilt of cheating on my husband was just killing me slowly. At some point, I couldn't bear it, and I called Mike and told him about it. When I told him, he seemed unbothered and told me not to think much about it. I yielded to the advice and I moved on. Due to the hectic work schedule, we closed late and I went home. 2 weeks later, Paul and his friends planned a one-week holiday somewhere far away from town. They usually do that twice a year. It was their way of hanging out together and relieving themselves from work stress. My husband told me about the trip and was happy and excited. He told me 3 days before their movement. I helped my husband and packed his clothes and what he needed for the trip. I even packed extra clothes for him in case they wanted to stay longer than they planned, and also made a few snacks for the boys like I usually do every year. This year, I didn't know why I was very excited for the trip. My husband had to ask me why I was overexcited and if everything was okay, which I told him I was fine. The day of the trip came and Paul was set to go. I even escorted him to the airport where we waited for about 30 minutes before the rest of the crew came to join us. We chatted for a while after doing all the necessary requirements that were needed at the airport. My husband and I even took pictures together. At some point, I got a bit emotional because I was going to miss him, LOL. So guys, a few minutes later, Mike and I said our goodbyes and left the airport. I won't lie, guys, I was a bit emotional. I couldn't stop asking myself why I was feeling that way. I headed home straight and rested for that day. I didn't go to work because my boss had given me the day off so I could prepare my husband for his trip. I didn't call Mike that day to tell him that Paul had left because I wanted to be alone for that day. I kept myself busy with some of the work I didn't finish the previous day and also did a lot of cleaning. After I was done, I listened to some good music and treated myself to some homemade food. Immediately, Paul arrived at their destination. He gave me a call to let me know. It took them about 3 hours to land. From the airport to the hotel they booked, Paul gave me all the details. We were on video call all through. It felt like we just started dating at that time. Most of Paul's friends teased him all through the time we were on video call. We talked on the phone till it was late in the night. At some point, I slept off. Honestly, guys, at that time, I was very happy. The next morning, as usual, I got dressed and went to work. I did my normal routine for that day and even had to close early so as to not stay late. Just when I was about to close for the day, Mike showed up. At that time, we hadn't seen each other after what happened between us. We only talked on the phone when I told him about the guilt and Paul's trip. As usual, he was excited to see me. He asked about how I was, and I told him I was fine. I didn't want my boss to see him flirting with me because he had turned into an important client to my boss because of his frequent patronage, and also I didn't want to raise any suspicions. My boss knew about my marital status and also knew my husband. I quickly packed up and signed out for the day. Mike told me he wanted to take me out on a dinner date that day. We headed straight to my house so I could change into some nice outfit. After I was done changing, we went to the restaurant and I discovered that Mike had made some reservations for us. It was a nice restaurant and the corner that was reserved was very cozy and noise-free. A few minutes after we arrived, we made some orders. Mike kept on complimenting my look and the red dress I wore. I kept on blushing and smiling. At that moment, I was already getting tired. I felt like the orders were taking time to come because I was hungry and needed to eat something. The orders finally arrived and we ate. We even tried some exciting continental dishes and had lots of drinks. It was indeed a nice dinner. I had so much fun, even Mike too. After we were done, we also went to the cinema and watched a movie together, had ice cream, and did a lot of stuff. People that saw us would literally think Mike and I were a couple. We were so close to each other and people couldn't stop staring at us. After we were done from the cinema, we headed home. The fun didn't stop there, guys. Mike and I had a few shots at home and also played some games. Mike and I were literally wasted and made out throughout the night. The next day, I woke up with a banging head. My head was hurting because of the shots we had the previous night. Since that day, I have promised myself to quit drinking. I looked at the other side of the bed and I couldn't find Mike. Immediately went downstairs to look for him. Then I found him making some tea in the kitchen. He was preparing it for me so it could relieve me of the headache. I drank the tea and he told me that he would make us something to eat. Mike made spaghetti and meatballs as breakfast. Guys, a few hours into the day, my husband called to check on me. Apparently, we didn't speak the day I resumed work. He was kind of pissed about it. I didn't know what to say because I was guilty for not calling him, and so I apologized. We talked for a while and he promised to call me back later that night. I got off the phone with my husband and joined Mike in watching the movie. Guys, the few weeks that my husband was away from town, Mike and I lived together and did a lot of makeout. We went on a couple of dates, bought me gifts, and even went to parties together. Honestly, guys, I had so much fun with Mike. At some point, I was starting to think about choosing between my husband and Mike. Despite that husband was far away, he didn't stop checking up on me or making me feel special. I was loved by two men at the same time, which made me feel guilty about my infidelity with Mike. So guys, my husband's trip lasted for an extra week. They wanted to spend exactly that 2 weeks they planned, but their flights were canceled and delayed because of bad weather, and so they had to stay an extra 1 week. The morning their flights were canceled, my husband called to tell me. He was a little bit down because he had wanted to see me. I told Mike about the situation and he was happy because he would be spending another week with me. I was also not happy because I was missing my husband and I was feeling a bit of regret for cheating on him. Mike stayed with me throughout that week and he left the next week that Paul was to return back home. It was on a Sunday morning. After Mike had left, I cleaned everywhere. The house was literally a mess. I didn't have time to clean because Mike and I were too busy doing a lot of making out together. Our routine was discouraging. In the 3 weeks we had together, I could count the number of times I went to work. I skipped work nonchalantly and even made flemez excuses. My boss believed me because I have worked with her for years and I hadn't skipped work during these years, and so it was easy to convince her. So guys, that morning after I was done cleaning, I thought of attending the Sunday service, but I couldn't believe I was late as at the time I was done. Made breakfast and prepared something for my husband to eat when he arrives. I waited for hours and it felt like it took forever for him to come, and even slept off at some point. A few minutes into my nap, the door rang and I quickly got up and ran to the door. I opened the door and I saw my husband looking all handsome and I jumped on him. We hugged for long before we disengaged and we kissed. We both reminded ourselves how much we have missed each other. Paul didn't fail in getting me gifts like he promised. I was so happy to the extent I kept on hugging him. I was just too busy unwrapping the gifts he bought for me. Paul went upstairs to freshen up and change into a nice outfit. After he was done, he came downstairs to join me. We had brunch together and told me how his trip went down. My husband also told me some of the funny and embarrassing moments he had. It was nice discussing stuff with my husband. Paul and I barely do this. But one thing I was confused about was why all these happened after I cheated on him with my college friend Mike. Not just my college friend, but my best friend. Guys, to be very honest with you all, I felt guilty. My conscience was dealing with me slowly. At that moment, I wanted to open up to Paul about my infidelity with Mike, but then again, I thought of how he would react to it. At that time, I liked the new Paul. I loved the attention and everything. I didn't want to ruin the moment or turn him into a ruthless psycho. Then again, a part of me wanted me to open up and face the consequences. I was deep in these thoughts when my husband tapped me and asked if everything was okay. It was then I realized that I was lost in thought and didn't pay attention to what he was telling me. I assured him everything was fine and apologized for not paying attention. He nodded and continued what he was saying. The next morning, Paul and I woke up and decided to go jogging. We usually did it when we first got married. It was one of our morning routines, but we stopped because we got busy with work. It was on a Monday morning and it was also a national holiday, and so we spent it together at home. It was nice hanging and spending time with Paul. Guys, Paul and I even cooked together throughout that day. It meant a lot to me and to Paul especially. He saw it as a way of reviving our love. At that moment, I was very uncomfortable. My guilty conscience wanted to ruin the moment, but I kept quiet, thinking I could make amends. Paul and I lived happily together for a week. I was very happy and felt alive. During this time, Mike and I were just mutual friends. I felt guilty and wanted to end things with him, but I didn't let him know. Instead, I kept him at a far distance. One morning, I woke up and didn't see Paul anywhere around. I didn't think much about it because I thought he had gone to work. I got out of bed and got dressed to go to work also. After I was done dressing, I had breakfast and was set to leave the house. I went for my car keys, but it took me a while to find it. I found it on the center table in the sitting room. It was strange because I don't usually keep my keys there. Then I saw a written note beneath it and thought maybe it was one of Paul's usual love letters. Guys, I opened it and read what was written on it. You all wouldn't believe it. The content of the letter heartbreaking. Paul had written a letter to me telling me about the used condoms he found in the laundry basket. He affirmed that I was cheating on him because he remembered the last time we made out, which was a month before his trip. Guys, I was heartbroken and bursted into tears. I knew that I was guilty of this, and I didn't open up to him, and he found out himself. I am finished, guys. Update. Hi guys, it's me again. Have received a lot of comments, and I'm genuinely grateful for taking out time for me. I see all the nasty comments, and I deserve it all. I just want to share all that happened after Paul caught me cheating on him. Apparently, my husband got suspicious when he noticed the condoms were missing. He didn't ask me anything before he left me a note on the table that day. I waited for days waiting for Paul, but I was unable to reach out to him. I called some of his friends, but none gave me a reasonable answer. Guys, honestly, after reading that letter, I felt devastated. My world is crumbling right in front of me, guys. All means to reach out to my husband have failed. A thought came to my mind to go to the family house to tell them about my missing husband and help me talk to him, but I couldn't. I was too ashamed to go. How would I be able to face them after all I have put their son through? And my husband made it clear that I shouldn't dare show my face at the house. Right now, as I write this, I currently do not have anywhere to go. Going to my parents is a bad option because they do not want to even set their eyes on me. How could Paul do this to me? He wrote me a letter after finding out about the missing condoms. After knowing about it, he didn't even bother to have a conversation. He acted like everything was okay. I knew I had wronged him, and I terribly regret my actions. I honestly wanted to tell him about my infidelity, but I couldn't muster the courage to. I knew it wouldn't end well, and my husband didn't even make it easy for me either. A week after Paul left the house, he came back and threw my things out. He warned me not to be there before he gets home, but I didn't listen. I thought I could fix things, but the way it was, I came to the realization that all hope was lost. My husband kept on calling me a cheater and was putting all my stuff outside. As a result of this, the neighbors got out of their apartment and began to watch. Obviously, it was a thing of entertainment to them. Paul embarrassed me to the point I couldn't show my face. Honestly, guys, I've never been that embarrassed in my life. The humiliation was just too much for me and I couldn't bear it. I quickly put all my stuff together and left in shame. I had nowhere to go and I discovered I had some cash with me, and so I booked a hotel. As if the humiliation I faced at the house wasn't enough, my husband reported me to my boss about my infidelity with one of her clients, and even told my boss I do sleep with all of her male clients. My boss didn't take it lightly and she fired me immediately. Paul did not only lay a false accusation on me that I do sleep with the rest of the male clients, but also ruined my reputation. My husband ruined my only source of income. Guys, I thought that was all, but I didn't see the last he did to me coming. My husband swapped all my savings. I was at the hotel after being humiliated and fired from my place of work. I saw several debits alerts. No one had access to any of my credit cards except for my husband. Paul took all of my money and left me penniless. That money was my only hope left. That's what I used to sustain myself after Paul sent me out. I planned on getting an apartment with it once I decide on what to do, but my husband swapped everything and even froze the joint accounts we had together. I was penniless. Right now, I have no cash to even renew my hotel fee. Paul took the worst revenge on me. Update. Hi guys, I'm here to tell you guys all that went down after my husband sent me parking from the house and left me penniless. Honestly speaking, these past few weeks haven't really been easy for me, guys. Just in a twinkle of an eye, I lost my marriage, work, and my hard-earned money. I don't know where else to run to. I went back to the house to plead with Paul, but all efforts went in vain. The last time I did go, he asked the gatekeeper to throw me out and also demanded I sign the divorce papers and have it sent back to him. I thought maybe going to the house to talk to him will make him have a change of mind. I have no one to escort me to plead with my husband. My parents would not even take my calls, even if I try, because they are totally against infidelity. No friends or relatives I could go to. Most of my high school friends and colleagues from college are out of town. I'm all left alone in this place with nothing. Guys, a lot went down this past few weeks. I even went to see my Mike, hoping he would have some little sympathy for me since we were best friends. But guys, Mike was the worst of them all. After Paul sent the gatekeeper to throw me out, I immediately headed to Mike's hotel to have a conversation with him. When I got there, I asked to see Mike, and it took a while before he could come down to the reception to see me. He didn't even apologize for keeping me waiting. Rather, he demanded that I say whatever I had to say quickly because he had work to do. To say I was shocked and surprised is an understatement, guys. I couldn't wrap my head around what Mike said, but I still told him what brought me to his place. Guys, you all wouldn't believe it. After listening to what happened between me and my husband, Mike bluntly told me he can't date me or even have anything to do with me again because I was too cheap to lay with. I was too heartbroken to have heard anything from Mike. I left the hotel shamefully. Honestly, guys, hearing those words coming out from Mike's mouth pierced my heart so much that I literally wept for days. 3 days after that heartbreaking discussion with Mike, I made one of the toughest decisions of my life, which is divorcing my husband, Paul. I had no option. All hope was lost and his mind was already made up, and so I had the divorce papers signed and had it sent to him. Since then, I haven't heard anything from him. Well, not expecting anything though, because I'm paying the price for my actions. I messed up big time. I used my hands and literally destroyed everything I have built for years. I did not only lose my relationship of 5 years or my career, I also lost my parents and my family. They disowned me the day they heard about my infidelity with Mike. I thought in all of this Mike would stay with me like he also did, but I guessed I was mistaken. One of the dumbest decisions I have ever made was to choose Mike over my marriage. Paul had always been there for me, but I was too blind to have seen that because I thought he wanted me to forfeit my career. Guys, there's no need to go back and forth with this. I have accepted my fate and I have learned my lesson. Unfortunately, I learned it the hard way and I terribly regret my actions. This is my story, guys. I hope you all have learned something from this. Sometimes the people we think have our backs are the ones that would leave us when trouble strikes. Let's be mindful of the kind of friends we keep. I would be happy to hear from you guys what you think and also advise me on what to do under the comments section. Yes, I'm also ready to hear all the nasty comments because I deserve it. Hey Reddit, sometimes we as humans make the most stupid mistakes. And then after we make those mistakes, only then do we realize how messed up it was and how wrong we were. I'm in a similar kind of situation now and I've made a very horrible mistake. I genuinely do not know if there's any saving my marriage here, considering what I did was something my husband has been against and has never tolerated. It's his one deal breaker and I went against his rules. My name is Jessica and I am a 30-year-old woman. My husband's name is Adam and he is 29. Adam and I have been married for about a year. Adam has a very good job in cybersecurity, while I used to work as a sales associate at a clothing store. Or at least I used to. Adam and I met in college. I won't lie and say it was love at first sight for me and my husband, or at least for me. My husband says it was love at first sight for him and that he fell in love with me from the first time he set his eyes on me. But it's not the same for me. You see, before my husband Adam, there was Ethan. Ethan and I were childhood friends, and for a long time, right from when we were kids, I was quite sure that Ethan was the one I would marry and spend the rest of my life with. We started dating right in middle school and all the way up until high school. I genuinely loved Ethan, and I guess a small part of me still loves him too. However, when we graduated, Ethan did not want to go to college and dropped out. I, on the other hand, wanted to go to college, and it's not like I've ever really been good at school or anything, but I just still wanted to try my best. I then realized that Ethan wasn't really serious with his life, and he had no ambition whatsoever. I couldn't spend the rest of my life with such a person. I wanted financial security. I wanted someone wealthy. So I had to do what was really painful, and I broke up with Ethan and cut ties with him. Then when I went to college, I met Adam, my husband. He was different from Ethan in many ways. Adam had a clear vision for his future, and he was determined to succeed. He was studying cybersecurity, which even back then I knew was a promising field. Adam's ambition and drive attracted me to him, and gradually I started developing some feelings for him. It wasn't a whirlwind romance or love at first sight, but it grew over time as I got to know Adam better. After we graduated from college, Adam and I continued dating up until a year ago when we got married. We would have gotten married earlier, but Adam wanted to expand his savings before then. That was something Ethan would have never thought about. Adam was everything Ethan was not, both financially and also in terms of intelligence. Things had been pretty good for us up until I started making the big mistake of withdrawing from Adam. Up until Ethan came back into my life, things were pretty great. Adam was a romantic person who knew how to make his partner happy. He took care of me and enjoyed doing so. He didn't bother me about finding a job when it was taking me a while to. Things were amazing between us. Communication was top-notch. The only downside was the sex. It was mid, nothing to write home about, but I had always made do with it. We split the bills and chores in a way that worked for us. Adam took care of all the bills and I took care of all the chores. That was the system and way that worked for us. After a while of staying at home and searching for a job, I had been doing it quite half-heartedly. On one hand, I didn't want to be home all day as I knew I would get bored pretty quickly. On the other hand, others took care of everything, so I didn't feel a strong sense of urgency. However, I also knew that I needed something to keep me engaged and active. So I found my job, or at least the job that used to be mine. It was a perfect fit for me because the hours were really good, allowing me to have a balance between work and personal life. The only downside was that the pay wasn't much, but it was okay since I wasn't working primarily to earn money. I was working for the sake of having something to do, to keep me occupied and fulfilled. A few months back, I received a message from an anonymous account on social media. I was curious, so I replied, and soon enough I found out that it was Ethan. He told me that he had been searching for my number but couldn't find any of our old schoolmates who had it. The only way he finally found me was through social media. Ethan mentioned that he wanted closure, and he even seemed disappointed to find out that I had gotten married, which I found a bit surprising since he was married too. I was taken aback by his message. To be honest, I hadn't heard from Ethan since we parted ways in high school. After I broke up with him and cut ties, the last I heard was that he had left town. Hearing from him now, I was relieved to know that he was well and healthy, but a part of me also felt a rush of emotions, missing him and realizing that I still loved him. Ethan suggested meeting up for closure, but I refused. It didn't feel appropriate given that I was married. I told Ethan that while I appreciated his desire for closure, meeting in person wouldn't be the right decision. He relented and suggested that we at least keep in touch, to which I agreed. It felt like the right compromise because it allowed us to maintain a connection without crossing any boundaries. If I had known that I would get this attached, I would have never even replied to that message. Because after that, Ethan and I started talking. Initially, it was a bit awkward, just a few heys and talking about life, reminiscing on our high school days and the memories we shared. But soon enough, our conversations became more frequent and regular. We started chatting every day, sharing updates about our lives, discussing our past experiences, and even talking about married life. It was strange yet comforting to reconnect with someone who had been such a significant part of my life before. Despite my initial reservations, I found myself opening up to Ethan and enjoying our conversations. And as time went by, our chats became even more intimate, and we started talking out our emotions. I found myself getting emotionally invested in our exchanges, and I started reliving old feelings and memories. Ethan and I continued talking even more, and I realized just how much I had missed him. Our conversations became so frequent and entertaining, to the extent that I couldn't even put down my phone when my husband was at home. I was always waiting for Ethan to reply, always waiting for his reactions to the funny videos I sent him and vice versa. It got to the point where my husband must have noticed, or at least I think he did. Sometimes I would catch him looking at me curiously, especially when I laughed out loud at something Ethan had said or sent. I could sense him silently questioning me, but he never directly asked me anything about it. Despite the guilt and unease I felt about hiding my conversations with Ethan from Adam, I couldn't seem to stop. It got to a point when Ethan started suggesting that we meet up in person, and I agreed. At that point, I genuinely believed that Ethan and I were just friends reconnecting, catching up on lost time. I convinced myself that meeting up as friends wouldn't be a problem, that it was a harmless gesture of rekindling our old friendship. I ignored the nagging doubts and the warning signs and brushed off any concerns about the nature of our relationship. After all, Ethan had expressed wanting closure initially, and I saw meeting up as a way to provide that closure and move on as friends. But deep down, I guess I must have known that there was more to it, but the excitement of seeing Ethan again didn't even let me think. I guess it usually starts slow for everyone, or at least it did for me. Ethan and I kicked things off by hanging out, hitting up some old spots we used to frequent, and checking out places that brought back memories. It was like stepping back in time, reliving moments we hadn't thought about in ages. It was all about reminiscing, swapping stories, and cracking up over old inside jokes. We just enjoyed being around each other again, soaking in the nostalgia and marveling at how much life had changed since our school days. Those moments felt easy and comfortable, like catching up with an old friend over a cup of coffee. We appreciated those times, grateful for the chance to reconnect and see where life had taken us. But I guess reality started to blur a bit. Spending more time with Ethan brought back memories that hit me like a wave. It felt like I was transported back to high school, reliving those carefree days with him. The laughter, our shared secrets, the comfort of his presence. It all flooded back, and I realized just how much I had missed him. I missed him a lot. It was like I had stepped into a time machine, revisiting a chapter of my life that I thought was closed. The nostalgia was bittersweet, and it reminded me of simpler times and the deep connection I once had with Ethan. I found myself longing for those days, wishing I could turn back the clock and relive those moments again. At that point, I had started skipping work just to spend more time with Ethan. It had gotten that bad. I was consumed by every waking moment with him, especially when my husband wasn't around. All the while, it felt like I was drifting further from my husband. The more time I spent with Ethan, the more distant I became from Adam. Ethan and I moved from hanging out in public places to more intimate settings like our houses. It was a gradual shift, one that I didn't fully realize until later. As I grew more comfortable with Ethan, our conversations became more relaxed and familiar. We laughed together and enjoyed each other's company in a way that felt effortless. Being with him again made me realize that although I didn't love him as intensely as before, I still missed him. I'm sorry for rambling, but I'm sure you already know where this is heading. Ethan and I would often hang out at our houses when our partners were out. I'm sure you already know where this is headed. The more time we spent at our respective houses, the closer we got. Then one afternoon, we crossed the line and slept together, cheating on our partners. It was a moment of weakness. I just missed how great the sex with Ethan was. Afterward, I expected to be racked with guilt, but honestly, I felt more pleasure than anything else. I had mentioned before that my husband was just okay in bed, but Ethan's skills made me realize what I had been missing. Despite not feeling much guilt initially, I knew deep down that what I had done was wrong. I didn't want a repeat of it. I told Ethan that it could never happen again, that we could only remain friends if we avoided crossing that line. He agreed, and for a while we tried to resist the temptation. But of course, temptation is a powerful force. Before I knew it, we were caught up in a full-blown affair. And that's how my affair with Ethan started. By then, I had skipped work so often that I ended up getting fired. I didn't have any solid excuses, and my lack of skill in lying didn't help either. But I was so deeply entangled in my thing with Ethan that I didn't even care about losing my job. Despite being jobless, I made sure to keep it a secret from Adam. I continued going over to Ethan's house, using the pretext that I was heading to work. Ethan's wife had a demanding job and was often away, making it easier for us to carry on without being discovered. It was like a perfect setup for us, with no one around to question our whereabouts. To add to the secrecy, I didn't share my location with Adam. Everything just seemed to fall into place conveniently for us, and it allowed our affair to flourish in the shadows without any immediate consequences. Keeping the fact that I had lost my job was quite challenging, especially when Adam eventually found out. It happened through a mutual friend who happened to shop at the store where I used to work. She discovered that I no longer worked there and mentioned it to Adam, who of course confronted me about it. He was shocked and disappointed that I hadn't told him about losing my job. He questioned me about where I went every time I left the house and pretended I was going to work. Adam expressed how distant I had become lately, and I could see the concern and hurt in his eyes. In response, I apologized and spun another lie, claiming that I was just ashamed to tell him about losing my job. I told him I went to the mall instead of work, hoping to alleviate his suspicions. When he mentioned my distance, I brushed it off, telling him he was overthinking things and that everything was fine between us. Then my husband suggested we try couples therapy, but I shut it down right away. So instead, Adam decided to cut back on work hours and started working majorly from home to spend more time with me, trying to mend the growing gap between us. While his effort was appreciated, it also meant I couldn't see Ethan as much. Honestly, that should have been my cue to end things with Ethan. I could have walked away clean, no strings attached. But the truth was, Adam's bedroom skills were lacking, and Ethan's tool just kept drawing me back. So despite the limited chances we had to meet, I kept seeing Ethan. It boiled down to just a few times a month, mostly for sexual needs. Sometimes I'd wait for Adam to be out, or I'd cook up excuses like a trip to the mall or groceries to sneak over to Ethan's place when his wife wasn't around. This routine went on for a good few months. Whenever the urge hit, I made sure to find a way to meet up with Ethan for some physical satisfaction. I started feeling like I was pretty clever, like I had this whole affair under wraps and there was no way Adam would catch on. Man, was I wrong. I got a bit cocky, thinking I had outsmarted any chance of getting caught. It was like I was playing a game of cat and mouse with reality, and I was convinced I was winning. But as they say, pride comes before a fall. My world came crashing down when my husband finally caught up to me, and let me tell you, his reaction was like a sledgehammer. It all went down just a day ago. I hadn't seen Ethan for about a week, and he had gone completely off the grid. I started to panic, so I cooked up a story for Adam saying I needed to run to the grocery store. I knew Ethan's wife would likely be out at that time, so I would meet Ethan alone at home. But when I got to Ethan's place, guess who opened the door? His wife, and she looked very angry and like she'd seen a ghost. She laid it all out for me, saying Ethan wasn't around and that I was not welcome there ever again. I was stunned, speechless, but I didn't even stick around to argue. I just hightailed it to the grocery store, trying to act normal. I was hoping to grab a few items to make my story believable to Adam. But here's where it gets really messy. At the checkout, my card decided to play games, but it was getting declined over and over. That sinking feeling hit me hard. It wasn't until I stepped out of the store and checked my account that I realized everything had been wiped clean. That's when the panic really set in. I raced home, my mind racing even faster. I needed Adam to sort things out with the bank, but as soon as I got there, I knew something was terribly wrong. My stuff was scattered on the porch, and there was Adam looking very angry. The moment I stepped up to the house, Adam was all business. He didn't waste a second in demanding his keys back. He sounded very angry, but looked calm. Adam then told me that he didn't want to hear excuses or explanations. He just wanted me out of his sight. His words were like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. He didn't hold back. He blamed himself for being too trusting and letting my affair go, calling me ungrateful. And then came the gut punch. Adam dropped the bombshell. We were getting a divorce. It was like a slap in the face, I tried to explain, to stop him from going inside, but he brushed past me like I was nothing. He pushed me aside, locking the door behind him, shutting me out completely. After Adam had locked the door behind me, reality started to hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything had happened so fast that my mind couldn't keep up. It dawned on me. I was homeless and my husband wanted a divorce. The realization of that brought a flood of confusion and guilt, and I couldn't even hold back tears from streaming down my face. I started crying badly. I loved Adam. I didn't want to lose him or our life together. I started banging on the door. I was desperate for him to open up, to give me a chance to explain, to plead for forgiveness. But he remained stubborn. He didn't even answer. When my banging persisted, he finally spoke up and warned me that he would call the police if I didn't leave immediately. That was when fear gripped me and I knew I had to go. In a state of panic, I started dialing Ethan's number. I was hoping against hope that he would be my lifeline. But there was no answer, no comfort from the one person I thought could understand. My next attempt was reaching out to friends, but it seemed luck was not on my side. No one was willing to house me or even chip in for an Uber. Just when I felt like I had hit rock bottom, my younger brother came through. He came over within minutes, picked me up, and took me to his place. He offered me a place to stay temporarily, but he made it clear it wouldn't be a long-term arrangement and I would eventually have to leave. Still, I was grateful for any help that I could get, so I didn't protest. I am so confused, Reddit, I don't even know what to do. Any advice would really be appreciated. Is there any way I can save my marriage? I don't want to lose my husband, please. Help. Update.
Hey, Reddit.
I know I messed up big time by cheating, and I don't have any excuses for my actions. The hate comments and DMs are overwhelming, and I get it. I don't deserve any sympathy. But please, give me a chance to explain. A lot of you are saying I sound nonchalant and that I miss Ethan. Let me clarify. I don't miss Ethan. It was the physical aspect that kept me going back, not any emotional attachment. I feel incredibly guilty for betraying my husband, and I'm truly sorry. To answer some questions, yes, I do feel guilty, and no, I haven't found another job since I got fired. Ethan doesn't have a job either. He was searching but hadn't found yet, which is why his wife is the main provider. That was why he had so much free time to spend with me. As for my husband, I'm trying to reach out and talk things through, but he's not responding to my messages or calls. It's tough, and I'm constantly crying, but I'm holding on to hope since he hasn't even blocked me yet. I believe that we can work through this together if only he listens to me. If my husband forgives me, I want us to work on our sex life together. Maybe explore new things like using toys to make things better between us. I know I messed up and I won't cheat again. I just wanted to address some of the common questions and the hate comments. I'm not proud of what I did, and I'm facing the consequences every day. Thanks for reading. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm back, though it's only been a few days since my last update. The hate train is still going strong, but I expected that. Some of you were asking for an update, so here it is. First off, I saw some comments wishing my husband would find out about all this, but thankfully he's not on social media, so that won't happen that way. As for Ethan, I still haven't heard anything from him. I'm starting to get worried, so I asked a mutual friend to check in with his wife for me. So hopefully I'll have an update on that soon and I'll fill you guys in. On the home front, things are still strained. My husband is not responding to any calls or messages. It's taking a toll on me and I'm feeling more depressed by the day. My brother, who's letting me stay for now, has made it clear that it's only temporary. I'm grateful I didn't even think he would help me as we've had our differences in the past. I haven't reached out to my family because our relationship is rocky, to say the least. They wouldn't take me in, and the same goes for my husband's family. It feels like everyone hates me right now. I've also seen questions about why I'm broke when I used to work. The truth is, I didn't save much because I didn't have to worry about bills. Adam took care of that. I spent my paycheck on things I wanted without thinking about the future. It was a mistake, and now I'm facing the consequences. It's a very tough situation to be in. From a comfortable marriage to possibly being homeless in a few weeks, it's a harsh reality check. All I want is for my husband to at least talk to me and take me in, even if it's just temporary until I get back on my feet. Thanks for reading, Reddit. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again with a bit of an update on the Ethan front. I finally heard from our mutual friend and the news isn't great. Ethan's wife kicked him out of the house. She's apparently been looking for him to serve him with divorce papers because she found out about our affair and spilled the beans to Adam. So that mystery is solved. I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. Now I realize Adam wanted me to leave the house that day so he could throw my things outside. But I don't understand why he didn't just talk to me about it before taking such a drastic step. Speaking of Adam, I still haven't received any replies from him. It's been radio silence on his end. I've decided to take matters into my own hands and go back to our house to confront him. Maybe face-to-face communication will help clear the air. It's been a rough ride, and I know the hate bandwagon is still rolling strong. I appreciate those of you who are listening and trying to understand. Thanks for reading. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again with a mini update because I am currently in tears. Posting here feels like a little refuge despite all the hate, so here I am pouring my heart out. I just got back from what used to be my house, or rather Adam's house now. Remember how I said I was going there to have a face-to-face conversation with him? Well, let me tell you how that went. At first, he wouldn't even open the door. It was like I was invisible. I kept knocking and ringing the doorbell until he finally emerged. The anger in his eyes was clear, and I knew I was in for it. I tried to apologize and explain that I needed to talk to him, and the only option I had was coming here since he wouldn't answer my call or messages. But he wasn't having any of it. Adam unleashed a rain of words on me. He told me in no uncertain terms that forgiveness wasn't on the table. He called me stupid for even thinking he would forgive me after months of cheating. It was a harsh reality check, hearing it all from him. He mentioned how he found out thanks to Ethan's wife and how he's already preparing divorce papers and that I would be served soon. He made it crystal clear that he didn't want any communication from me, not even a visit, or else he'd involve the authorities and file a restraining order. With that, he went back inside and just left me standing there feeling completely shattered. I had to leave. I felt defeated and heartbroken. The weight of guilt and regret is crushing. I miss my husband terribly, and the realization that I'll soon be evicted from my brother's place adds to the stress. I now realize that I need to find a job fast so I can afford a place to stay when the time comes. Thanks for reading, Reddit. It means more than you know. Update. Hey Reddit, back with another update. It's been quite a roller coaster lately. I appreciate the sympathy and support I've been getting. It really means a lot during these tough times. Today was particularly rough. I got served with divorce papers. Many of you advised me to sign them when they come, and that's exactly what I did. It was a painful moment. Tears were streaming down my face as I signed them. Signing those papers felt like the final nail in the coffin of my shattered marriage. I can't help but feel crushed and resentful towards Adam. Yes, I feel regret for what I've done, but also resentment towards Adam. I know I messed up, but I would have done anything to make it right. Why couldn't he just give us a chance to work through this? Why didn't he even want to try working on our marriage? Why did he jump straight to divorce after my mistake? I would have done anything to make things right, to earn his forgiveness, but it seems like that ship has sailed. The pain of losing him is unbearable at times. On the brighter side, I'm diving headfirst into job searching. I'm willing to take whatever job comes my way. It's like a step towards independence, and I'm scared of it. I've depended on Adam for so long, I don't even know how I'll survive on my own. Thanks to those who have been understanding and supportive. It's been a rough journey, but I'm taking it one day at a time. Update. Hey Reddit. The hate's still coming strong, but aside from that, I've been grateful for the little support and understanding that some of you have shown. I've also received some encouraging messages, and I want to express my gratitude for that support. It's been helping me cope and move forward. As for updates, there isn't much to report as I'm still in the waiting phase of the divorce proceedings. It's a slow and emotionally taxing process, but I'm trying to stay positive. Something interesting I've noticed is how my story has been circulating on platforms like TikTok and YouTube. It's strange seeing my life play out in videos online, sometimes even distorted or sensationalized. I admit I've peeked at some of these videos just to see if there are any new developments or if anything's been missed. However, I've learned to steer clear of the comment sections. They're also filled with hate comments about me, and everyone is always blaming me. On a brighter note, I have a job interview coming up. It would really help me so much, so fingers crossed that it goes well. Many of you have been curious about Ethan, and I want to assure you that I haven't given up on trying to reach him. I'm genuinely concerned about his well-being, and I'll definitely share an update if I manage to get in contact with him. Thanks for all the continued support and well wishes, no matter how little they may be. It's what's keeping me going through these tough times. Wish me luck for the interview. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while since my last update, and that's because a whirlwind of events has kept me busy and on my toes. Let me fill you in on what's been happening. Firstly, a lot of you kept asking for an update on this. No, I didn't get the job I interviewed for. It's disappointing, but I understand that not every opportunity is meant for me. It is what it is, I guess. Life goes on. On the Ethan front, he finally responded to my messages. However, it wasn't the reunion I hoped for. He's moved on and doesn't want to revisit our past. He told me that he was fine and well and that he wouldn't really like to be in contact with me now. He said that I was the reason why he got kicked out and that everything that happened was my fault. He said that he's with his new girlfriend now and he lives with her and he would really not like to be kicked out again, as after his wife kicked him out, he was homeless until he met his girlfriend. So I guess there's that. All this while I was worried that something bad had happened to him and he was just the one that didn't want to talk to me. So I guess that mystery is finally solved. I do think it's a bit crazy he's blaming me for this when he was the cause of everything. Regarding the divorce, things are progressing. In my state, there's a mandatory 1-year separation period before finalizing a divorce, unless it's filed under grounds like infidelity. Adam chose the latter, expediting the process to about 2 months. I have to face the consequences of my actions in court, and the odds aren't in my favor given the weight of infidelity in legal proceedings in my state. Living arrangements have been a challenge too. I stayed with my brother for a while, but it became clear that I was imposing. His girlfriend is moving in soon. She is going to be splitting the rent with him, and space is limited. I'm currently couch surfing at a friend's place, but it's temporary. I'm actively searching for a job that offers accommodation. Any leads or recommendations would be greatly appreciated. If I don't land a job soon that comes with a place to stay or at least some support, my only option might be crashing at my parents' place. It's not my top choice, especially since they're pretty mad at me for what I did. But I have to do what I have to do to avoid being out and homeless on the streets. Heading back to my parents' house is a bit of a mixed bag. I know they'll probably let me stay there for a bit despite everything, but it'll be awkward. There's still a lot of tension and hurt feelings because of what happened, me cheating. The idea of being homeless is scary as heck. It's like a wake-up call to how much my choices have messed things up for me. I'm searching hard to find a job with a roof over my head, but it's tough out here. Life has been a roller coaster, and I can't even find the strength to stay hopeful. Thanks for reading and for the hate and support, Reddit. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been quite a while, hasn't it? Apologies for the long silence. I left things hanging, and I'm here now to fill you in on what's been going on. Firstly, the reason for my absence was that I lost my phone. It wasn't one of those fancy ones that you can track, so once it went off the grid, I was out of luck. So I had to bite the bullet and get a new one. You're probably wondering how I managed that with my financial situation. Well, I had to swallow my pride and head back to my parents' place. I spent about a week crashing on friends' couches while job hunting, but the jobs I found were just soul-crushing and most didn't even offer temporary accommodation. Finally, I accepted that going home was my best bet, and that was how I ended up back at my parents' place. It was very rough, especially with all the anger and blame directed at me for my past mistakes. But after some intense conversations and me confronting them, things cooled down a bit. They're still horrible, but not as much as before. They're letting me stay, but not without a cost. They're charging me rent retroactively, which I'll pay off once I start getting paid from my new job. Speaking of which, I did manage to land a job. It's not the dream job, but it pays the bills. My first paycheck will likely go straight to my parents to cover the debt I owe them. But hey, it's a step forward. Now on to the big topic, my divorce. Yep, it's official. I got zilch from it. Not the house, not alimony, not even one of the cars. The judge didn't exactly throw me a bone, probably because of the whole cheating thing. It's still very painful to think about, but I'm trying to move forward. I even heard Adam got a promotion, and I reached out to Adam to congratulate him, but he didn't respond. I'm holding on to a glimmer of hope that maybe, someday we can at least be civil. My parents, however, think I'm being too optimistic and that I should just focus on myself. I've gotten a lot of hate and blame, but also some much-needed support and advice from this community. Things are still tough, but at least I'm not on the streets anymore. Thanks for sticking with me, Reddit.